Okay, hi everyone. We are here doing a Wolfram language design review, part of our incremental language development series, and we have various topics. First one is echo functions. All right, temporary echoes. Yeah, so I thought we built echo temporary. What happened to echo temporary? Did echo temporary not make it, or what?
No. We never had a design for echo temporary, and I don't know what this thing is that Ian has, just sort of whipped together in an afternoon. But
You say very dismissively at times, but it might be something.
yeah, well, because I know that's exactly what he did.
Okay. Well,
and
and I can vouch for it being whipped together.
Okay.
So
Okay, is this in the prototype build?
Yes.
but there was a whole constellation of issues, which is why this was never done.
Okay.
Right.
I mean, the use case that I really could see is something that I just ran into. It's like I put an echo in somewhere. There are two things that I've run into. One is I'm just spraying garbage in my notebook by having a lot of echoing going on. And I care about it while the thing is running. But once the thing finishes, it's like, okay, it's done. I don't need to see any of this stuff anymore. That's case number one. And case number two is it's just spewing echoes all over the place. And that's not so much an echo temporary as some kind of echo limited type thing.
Well, although maybe the echo temporary could be limited.
Yes, that's true too. It could have a scrolling window, so to speak, of what it was showing you.
Right. I mean, because basically, I think the use case for echo temporary is basically when you want progress reporting that you will never want to look back at once it's done.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. So what are we going to see here?
I'm going to assume this is just using print temporary.
Yeah, it uses print temporary and then modifies the cell object to look right, which is a hack.
Okay, how does print temporary prints and then it disappears when if I say print temporary 6 and then I say pause of 1, I'll see it until it finishes, right? So why can't we do the same thing with echo? Isn't the obvious thing to do to just echo temporary, do the same as print temporary?
That's what echo temporary is doing, yeah.
Okay. And so Itai, what's the horror story?
Well, we would need a better implementation, but if that's literally all you want, I suppose that's something you could have, although I'm not really convinced that this is a particularly useful thing, because normally I wanna I don't want it to survive long past the evaluation, but I do want it to survive past the evaluation so I can figure out what just happened.
Okay, so here's a question. If the evaluation is a long evaluation, then you basically want it to just be there while the evaluation is happening. If the evaluation is a short evaluation, you need to say what just happened, because you're confused, you get what I'm saying. I mean, it all went by and then you don't have, and then it's all gone, so to speak. So in a sense, if the thing lasted, if you could set a version of print temporary where there was just a single little X where you press it and it all disappeared. And that's a different type of model where let's say it was a thing like the too big output, where all of the echoes were all collected together with an X. You press the X, they all go away.
Why not a menu item?
For what? For them going
away? Delete
all
echoes from the notebook.
I don't think I'd want that, because I don't know what if I echoed 2 hours ago, I don't want to lose that. I don't think that's, I think more to the point is the only difficulty with a thing where, where there's a sort of a control for those echoes is they might be interspersed with other things. Although, you know, if it was the case from a UX point of view that they all lit up, you know, together. Yeah, Sandra is commenting, it would be nice to have an echo that only shows the last 8 or 10 things.
Yeah, that's under the limiting echoes section. We've got temporary echoes, limiting echoes, and redirecting echoes. And that's why echo temporary didn't go anywhere, is this became a very, very broad discussion when we last discussed it.
Okay. All right. So limiting echoes. Yeah, Dugan is commenting, users might want to clear all echoes. Yeah, Sandra was saying the same thing. So multiple people here have said that there's a kind of a clear echoes type thing, either for the whole notebook or perhaps for a selected region. I mean, is that, well, okay. So that seems to be a thing. I mean, it is, I mean, we've now got a cell gear menu, right? Actually, that's a place where this could actually go and be useful. Delete all echoes, right? In a cell gear menu, for example, for this section, if there was a delete all echoes in the cell gear menu for that section, that would be something I would use. What do other people think about this? Maybe people here don't know about the cell gear menu. Anybody?
Is that in the cloud?
It's coming to the desktop in the next version. It is in the cloud now, yes. You want to see it there?
Yeah, I think I've seen it in the cloud, but I haven't used it much.
You know, I'm not sure I would, I mean, I guess the question is, what cell types would this would this gear item go into, and you know, would I really want it to appear all the time? But,
well, look. Here it is. Okay, here's the. This will be a perfectly reasonable place to have a delete all echoes under this section heading, for example. Or, you know, because you're going to
Wouldn't it be better
select
just as a menu item? I mean, we have a menu item for like delete all output, right?
I know we do. Yeah, I guess so. It might be. It's except that, you know, it wants to be. You kind of want both one for the whole notebook and one for the selected region.
Well, for the all output, can you not? I don't use it much, so I don't know. But can you not select a section and then only delete output in that section?
Well, I don't think so, and I don't use it, and you don't use it, and you know, it's look, it was put there.
well, I use it, but not in. I've never attempted that. I use it to actually delete everything in a notebook, which is really quite useful. Let's see what happens if I delete it and still have a section. No, it applies globally to the notebook. It ignores the selection.
Yeah,
But it
That's
easily could
arguably something that
attention.
maybe we could change, but
Yeah.
I
But
you
so,
know, I wouldn't want to have that conversation without John.
yeah.
So the thing is, though, I'm not sure exactly why it would be so useful to have this delete all the echoes if we had some echo temporary or echo limited or whatever. Like my guess would be that basically people have echoes while they're developing code. Once they fix their bug or whatever, they just want to clean up the notebook and delete all the echoes or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you know,
But
The other case is,
to which I say is kind of silly, because, you know, my solution to that is to, you know, save my corrected code and reload it, and then make the echoes disappear by evaluating the corrected version and making sure that the bug is actually
okay,
fixed.
so let me tell you why that doesn't always work. Okay, so sometimes I have things where I had an echo in there, but it took 10 minutes to run. And then I want to delete the echo, and obviously I can go and do that, but it's annoying to have to do that. The other
an
case,
echo temporary or an echo limited would kind of just solve that problem.
yes, it would, right? But I mean, the other case that I think is a more common case is I put an echo into an inner loop, and because I want to see roughly what's happening in that inner loop. But then the things in the actual run, it's going to generate 100,000 echoes, which I just don't want. I just want to see the beginning of that inner loop. Right. So, and I would be okay seeing either just the first few or a window or a running window of the last 10 or something, continually updated, where the thing basically is like a thing where, you know, it's adding ones at the bottom and it's deleting ones at the top.
Right, and that's what I called stack and queue. Stack is like messages. Once you hit a message so many times, it doesn't print them anymore. Queue was a suggestion from Christopher that it would have a fixed number that are on screen, and you would like lose the first ones.
Yes.
And keep adding new ones to the
Exactly.
bottom.
Right.
Right. So I actually don't see how the limiting echo, like perhaps we want the limiting echoes behavior, but I don't see how it addresses at all the problem of wanting to clean up your notebook.
It
It's
doesn't.
more of a
But
not having
it
too much
addresses the
dedicated
problem that I
time.
just described, where I idly put an echo into an inner loop. Right. And the advantage of an echo limited would be that I'd see the first 10 times it hit that inner loop, but not the next 100,000. Now, okay, you've got things here about rate limiting. Okay, let's just get everything out on the table. You've
Yeah,
also got,
these are not like alternative
no, I know,
solutions.
these
These are
are-
all distinct items.
yeah, I realize.
Mhm.
How much do we care about redirecting echoes? I've never cared about that. Does anybody else care about that?
I've never used it.
Well, it doesn't exist, does
Well,
it?
we did suggest having it somehow display echoes in something that looks like a progress indicator, but I don't know how
Yes,
important it
right.
is.
Well, two things about that. I mean, one, that would be a little bit like the Echo Limited, but maybe more beautiful. But second, it seems like that's, I mean, I don't really know the status of the progress reporting stuff, but it does seem like that's something that we should definitely have, and I think is supported somewhere in the progress reporting stuff, where you can have a progress report that maybe doesn't even have a progress indicator, but it'll still say like what it's doing right now.
Right. Well, so, but that, what would that be? That would be an overall wrapper. I mean, that would be something where,
Right, that would require more infrastructure.
yeah, but it's going to be something like a progress panel or something, and then it's got blah, 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 and then it's got an echo inside it. And then the progress panel would pick up the echoes somehow.
I don't think you'd call it Echo. I mean, presumably, again, I don't know how the progress, I don't even know what the progress of the progress stuff is right now, but I mean, I'd imagine that there will be a bunch of sort of progress reporting functions where you could say something like, I'm now N% done, or, oh, I've just finished the next iteration of my loop, or whatever. And one of those functions would be something like, you know, set progress status or progress status of quotes,
Yeah.
you know, I just finished the blah phase or something.
Yeah, so I mean, so status or something like this is really the, with an overall wrapper. But so who knows about the progress reporting infrastructure? Itai, I thought that was your thing.
Well, yes, but I mean, it's, you know, there isn't sort of, I mean, we've made no attempt to, I mean, I guess there's a little bit of sort of standalone stuff, which I would need Julio to remind me of all the details, right? But mostly it's right. You have your function, and you know you sort of feed the progress reporting to you know, as you know, the data, and it sort of decides what to display based on what the data you give it is, which can be, right, there can be no estimates of anything. It can just be, you know, all I have is the current status.
Yeah.
Right?
Or it can be as elaborate as the, you know, classify, predict, progress things. But one feature of this, you know, one nice thing about the classify business is it gives you this great big progress, indicator. And then when it finishes its job, that all goes away. Right. And that's useful. And that's what we keep on saying here is, look, what are our objectives? Have the status information disappear when the computation is finished. Okay, that's case number one. And case number two is not have too much status information appear.
And I would argue that second one has two parts. One of them is just the aesthetic. I don't want 100 pages of junk in my notebook. The other one is the more practical, we've had this problem forever that if you run do of print of whatever, comma, billion, it will basically crash your front end.
Yeah, okay. So
Right.
protecting the front end and aesthetics. And by the way, I'd like to comment on the first one that
Right. But my claim is that, in the progress indicator case, right, none of that information, I just see that as completely distinct from echo, right? In the progress indicator case, I don't actually care or need to know sort of any of the details. I just really want to know, what's happening at this exact instant in time. And, whether that's, just telling me what it's doing, or whether it's a horizontal bar giving me some possibly horribly inaccurate, but better than nothing indication of how much time remains. But I don't actually need to know any of that information. Whereas echo, I'm putting it in because I want to know what this thing actually is, and I need to understand that because I'm debugging something.
Right, but often I think echo is useful for I think echo is often the best way, at least right now, to do kind of lazy progress reporting. Both because right now we don't really have good top level, progress panel or anything like that, but also because it's just, if you don't feel like putting all that infrastructure in, if you just want to know, okay, what iteration of this loop is my program crashing on, or something like that, then you use echo.
Right, and I think it's also useful, that echo returns its arguments, right? For the so progress.
Sure.
If we had something like so progress, it'd probably want to work like an echo where it does that, so you can just stick it in.
Yes, for sure.
Right.
Okay, so look, I can see a couple of things we might do here. So one possibility would be something like this is a bad name, but echo panel. Okay, where there's a bad name, but basically what that means is collect the echoes from the evaluation of Expa and put them in a temporary panel, which will go away when this echo panel exits.
Well, I was going to assume you were going to go the echo limited route. So it's going to make a panel that's, that has limited space.
Okay.
But then I would assume that it would, based on I guess the name is fake, but I would assume that it would keep living.
Right.
Yeah, I think whether you want it in a panel is independent from whether you want it to be temporary. You might want it after the evaluation summary that you can actually look at.
Or maybe you even want like an iframe-ish type thing where you can scroll through it, but it just doesn't take up too much space in your notebook.
Yeah, although I would argue, maybe there should be a way of getting it to do that, but I would argue that by default it should just trim things because it doesn't, the front end problem.
Right. Well, we've already got some of these things from the console output. The console notebook window, the messages window, has some of these same properties, doesn't it?
Right, and can't you set print to have print to the messages window, or is that not one of the locations?
Yeah, you can do it. You can do that, I believe.
Yeah,
I believe you can. I believe that's $urgent or something.
Because I think the echo action, or at least having echo support print action, was an external report because you can't really, it goes in your notebook,
Right, but I would guess that would be solved if we had echo limited or echo temporary or whatever. Like my guess is that the only reason why anyone wants different echo actions is because they want one of those pieces of functionality.
All right, so let's review what we've got here. We've got the concept of an echo temporary that is just like print temporary, and that basically lasts for the duration of that in-out, element. That's thing number one. Seems straightforward. Is it useful? I don't know. But it's directly analogous to print temporary, and that's presumably what you implemented here. Is that correct?
Yeah, so this needs more work probably in the C++ code to be done correctly.
Okay.
This is basically just print temporary.
Okay, but echo temporary, one question is, does there need to be scoping that is other than, REPL level scoping?
Well, I would argue that nothing should be specific to echo temporary, if by scoping you mean rate limiting and location.
No, I mean scoping as in, when does it go away?
The one scoping thing that we already have is quiet echo, which totally disables echo.
Right. But okay, but what I'm saying is, when does it go away? Right? Does it go away when you hit, because you could imagine something like this echo panel thing where it echoes while it's running that piece of code that takes it 5 minutes or something. Then as soon as that piece of code is finished, it cleans up like a progress monitor. It cleans up all the echoes from that piece of code.
Yeah, I called that temporarily echo in the agenda.
Okay.
And I'll just say temporary echo is the idea for an option that you could use in, for example, echo timing, all the echo functions.
Oh boy. I see.
Yeah.
That's another issue is those functions, how you make those temporary.
Yep.
So is there, maybe the solution, because right, we're running into we're going to have some giant matrix or hypercube of options. For these things like limited and temporary or panel or whatever, are there cases where you're going to want it? Are there cases where you couldn't just do it with an outside wrapper? That is, are there cases where you're going to have a bunch of echoes and you want some of them to be temporary, but others not, or some of them to be in the limited panel and others not?
I don't think so. I think that's a corner case. I agree with you. I think an outside wrapper is interesting.
And Stephen, you've asked for like this particular echo as it appears in the source code to only repeat so many times, which is yet another issue.
Yeah, I know. But I think, look, this is very much like error handling. It's something where, if you want a very particular behavior, you're going to have to program that behavior. The question is, can we automate doing something somewhat reasonable much of the time? Okay, by the time you are running your, by the time your echo is the primary output you want from your program and things like that, then you're playing a different game, so to speak. We're primarily, echo for diagnostics, and you really don't want to think that much about the diagnostics. They're sort of a temporary thing. So, okay, the thing that I see. So the question is, if we had an outer wrapper, let's say echo limiting or something, or echo control. Or we had multiple outer wrappers which do these different things. How would we feel about that? Because one of the issues is you're just going to put one echo in somewhere. And, I can see it being the case that it will be useful to just be able to say echo temporary in one place, just because that's what you want, or to be able to say echo limited in one place, because that's what you want.
Right, because also it means that you can have scoping. right? You can even say something like, suppose I have a big loop of loops, right? I could say something like, echo temporary around each of the inner loops, so that it will print a bunch of stuff from loop 1. Then once that loop finishes, it'll delete it all and then start printing stuff for loop 2 and so on. Like, that's a useful behavior.
I wasn't thinking, actually, that was not what I was thinking of, but it's a good idea. What I meant by this is a one-stop shop that just does a temporary echo, and that's all it does, just as a shortcut, without putting, okay, so you're suggesting echo block.
Right, you could call it control, but block seemed to make sense too.
Yes.
Well,
I
but
think
wait,
that-
would this be a general? I mean, I was sort of imagining there'd be, I mean, maybe this would conflict if we also had a standalone echo temporary or something. But I was imagining it there would be, maybe a few different wrappers for stuff like make it limited, make it temporary, whatever, and you
Well,
could
yeah,
nest these and so on.
I
and
did the
have no idea how
temporary
they
thing
nest.
as an option, which I called destroy after evaluation.
Right,
'Cause
but I
it's my
mean-
favorite symbol name.
The is that a real thing?
Yeah, it's for dynamic, or yeah, I think dynamic or dynamic module.
But not documented.
No.
Okay, but okay. I mean, one issue with this is we definitely want something where you can have an operator form, because, and what I'm suggesting here is, the sort of quick one-stop version, and then the wrapper controlled version. And so in this version here, you don't get to do echo timing temporary. This is just a pure, along the lines of, we are just trying to make the easy things easy. And this will be just a one-stop shop. It just does standard echo, but is temporary. Maybe this isn't sensible, but that's okay. And then on the wrapper, what we would need is something that has some kind of, well, I mean, we've already got quiet echo, which is a wrapper. And, this is a stupid name, but I'm just saying, and panel echo. Collect echo or something.
Echo handler.
No, well, but look, limit echo. Yeah, okay, so we could have quiet echo and limit echo.
Right? Is this
Then-
supposed to be the handler for all these things together, or is this just one of them?
No,
Like,
this
is
is
this supposed
a
to be able
wrapper.
to do? No, I know, but the question is, are we going to have a unified wrapper for doing things like limiting, temporarifying, maybe even quieting, or are we going to
I
have
think we
5
should
different
have
wrappers?
several specific wrappers and perhaps a general wrapper. Because I think, this is for debugging and things like that. You just want to put the damn thing in there. You definitely don't want something where you have options
Right.
trailing at the end.
Yes, right. Which is why I would argue it's better to have multiple ones. And if you have multiple ones, presumably, I mean, we'll have to think about how they interact, and I'm sure there'll be a bit of a mess there. But I'm not sure what the value of having a general one would be, because you could always just nest them.
Yeah, I agree.
So what does limit echo do?
It limits the number of echoes that you get generated from this evaluation.
So it just has
It
like
takes
a
the infinite
maximum.
limit of the of all the echoes that you're printing or something. Never mind.
Right. No, but I mean, and
Say
presumably,
it cuts off after 10, and then you don't get any more echoes.
yeah, it's very much like the thing that honestly has not been bad that we invented, 35 years ago for error messages, that you print 3 and then you stop. And then similarly here, this could print from every source of echo in the code. It could print a limited number of times by default.
So
I mean, how it determines that seems a bit troubled. I mean, with messages, it can get around it by basically saying, you can only print a certain message tag 3 times. I mean,
Well, it
maybe we
have a
could do
UUID
something
of
like,
some kind, but I agree it might be difficult.
yeah, I mean, we could do something of just, I mean, so one question is, would you want to limit it even if, well, right, like even if the echoes were technically different, like if it was the same echo, but say it includes a number and the number is slightly different. Yeah, I mean, we could echo it, we could do it based on the label as well. because you can label
Yes.
echoes, right?
Yes, but okay, but so
Could this just be an optional second argument to quiet echo?
no.
Quiet echo, comma in. You allow the first in and then quiet them after that.
Well, I mean, how would we do the operator?
Right
for
now
that?
it's effectively 0. Allow no echoes.
Yeah, but just purely syntactically, how would we do this?
X per comma n.
No, I know that, but we want to be able to say, I mean, you want to be able to say quiet echo at sign, blah, a big piece of code. Or / quiet echo. You don't want
But
to have to go edit.
You can
both
do
ends
that
of it.
now, but it completely quiets it.
No, I realize that. I understand. I understand what you're suggesting at a language level. I'm just saying at a pure syntactic level, it's very inconvenient to have to say quiet echo and
Well,
then big piece of code and then comma.
Can't be an
whatever.
operator form anyway because it's hold all, right?
Well, it's hold. It only needs to be hold. Yes. Okay. Fair enough. But I mean, it needs to hold.
You could use
Yeah.
infix. You could do tilde, quiet echo, tilde at the end of like a
No,
block or a
I
module.
understand. I understand. Nobody's going to know to do that. Then, I mean, that is an
Once
interesting
again, you're
idea.
calling us nobodies.
What's that?
Once again, you're calling me and Ian nobodies.
Oh, that you use infix? Great. I love
Never
that
will.
mechanism. I just never use it.
I mean, it's certainly not an everyday sort of thing, but every now and then it precisely hits the spot.
I will remark, Itai, that I have never seen either you or Ian in the entity store.
So we're non-entities.
True.
Okay.
There you are.
Okay, but no, this is not a bad idea. A quiet echo with a number there, but I still think, okay, what are the cases we're trying to do? So if limit echo, okay, and the other one would be collect or panel echo or something, which would be the thing that collects the echoes into a panel that presumably goes away. I mean, what's the point of that? That one would be the one where it has, the most recent echoes showing up and the older ones disappearing. Whereas limit echo would just say, cut it off. Panel echo would show a panel that is kind of the progress panel.
I see.
And I don't know what the right name for this is, but this one would, I mean, I'm not so, I mean, what we really want here is for these echoes to go away when the evaluation of this thing ends. Interim echo or something. It's a bad name, but you know what I'm saying. So this is show the echoes during the evaluation of expa and clean them afterwards, right? And this one is collect all echoes in a sort of scrolling panel. And this one would be cut off after some number of echoes.
Should we call it echo with cleanup to be like with cleanup?
For which one? For this one here?
Interim echo.
I'm not sure it has much to do with cleanup, honestly.
I mean, the cleanup is defined. You don't define the cleanup. It's predefined.
I don't know. Well, we could say cleanup echo. Because in fact, this function, when it finishes, will clean up the echoes.
Right.
right? That's the value of that thing as a thing which has the echoes cleaned up.
Why does it even need to contain an argument? Why can't it just be clean up, echo, open, close?
Well, you mean what would that apply
Well,
to?
I mean, we would need to implement a hold all sub values in order for that to be useful.
Well,
I
and
think.
I just mean, if the idea is to function that just, there's, I see. Okay, there's one version which is okay, fine. Yeah, it's delete all the echoes that occurred, during expr. It could clean up all the echoes that were printed during the evaluation of expr, as opposed to just clean up all echoes. Fine.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so look, this is, I mean, this one here is, now, unfortunately, we would have to have a default value of 10 or something for it to be useful. Although we probably could have an operator form. Could we? No, we couldn't have an operator form.
No. Although I think probably a lot more than 10, but yeah.
As the default.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, basically, the default would be a page-ish of echoes. I mean, or maybe we have to have something where we have a dollar echo limit. I mean, just like, how do we control how the too big thing comes up? How do we control when we do range of
It's
10?
dollar output size limit.
So this would be analogous to dollar output size limit.
Right, and there could be an echo limit option. If you wanted to temporarily reset it.
Is size a number or memory or something?
I think it's a byte count, but I don't remember, and it's
Maximum byte count, yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so I think this is a pretty reasonable proposal. Okay, so I'm suggesting that we have okay. I'm suggesting that we have echo temporary I think as an internal echo, just I'm just
It's
doing
just like
this.
print temporary, but it returns its argument.
Yes. And then that everything else is a wrapper. And then echo temporary is like saying clean up echo.
So echo temporary would clean up once the evaluation for that input line is finished.
That is
Cleanup
correct.
echo would clean up when the cleanup echo expression has finished evaluating.
That is
not
correct.
the input line.
Yep, that's correct. So those things are equivalent if you just say / cleanup echo at the end of your input.
Yeah.
So limit echo would be the echoes are going to be left. And so a not unusual thing to do would be to say, clean up echo at limit echo at expression. It's not terrible. Because I mean, the sloppy person is just going to say limit echo. And then this panel echo.
Limit echo is for protecting your front end, right?
What's that?
Limit echo is for ensuring you don't have a ton of
but
data.
I actually think that we should have a global echo limit just in order to not have this craziness. As Sanders commented on the live stream, and I agree, that just to avoid that craziness.
And that would
Then
apply always or only within limit echo?
No, always, because, by
Then we
default,
don't need limit echo, right?
What's that?
Limit echo would be unneeded then.
No, it's
Correct.
not unneeded. It's not unneeded. That will be a big limit. Okay. It's like you're not going to generate more than 10,000 echoes.
So it'll be higher than $echo limit by default.
Yes. I mean, dollar bad name, ultimate echo limit. I don't know what the right name for that is, but that's a protection like recursion limit, right? Like all these other things. It's a system protection limit. Maybe this, actually, maybe this gets called dollar default echo limit or something. I'm not sure. And this would get called
Max echo limit.
Yeah, but that suggests you can't set it anything bigger than that. I mean, session echo limit. That suggests that it aggregates over the whole session.
I feel like this is the sort of thing where then we're going to have a supreme echo limit and then an uber supreme,
The limiting echo limit.
right? An echo limit.
Right. The
One limit to limit them all.
Only if there are 9 for the kings of men.
what?
He made a Lord of the Rings reference, 1 ring to rule them all.
Oh, I see.
A trilogy I have not read in over half a century, I might add.
And I've never read it, and I couldn't sit through the movies either. So, the poorly educated. Okay, look, I think we've made some progress here. I think we should consult with Julio about the panel stuff and progress monitoring stuff, but I think we've got the elements of a plan here. And I think we should think through whether there's any, whether this makes sense. So I suggest we take a minute to look at, well, I don't know whether any of these are going to be, the one feature of the, did you prune this by things we've already done?
Yeah, we pruned out the things we'd marked as already completed or reviewed.
Okay. Well, persistent
Yeah,
expressions,
there's
I
tendrils
believe.
of,
Persistent expressions we can consider done.
Okay.
That's done. System credential. It's done. This is done as well. Okay. Inherited block. The heck is this?
This
What
has been
is
around
Like
forever.
block, it's basically a shortcut for the idiom block x equals x, comma, ... where you want to only temporarily add things rather than starting from a completely clean slate.
What? Wait a minute, what do you mean? What is block X?
So it's like if
So do
X has a value already and you want to build on that value, but then you want it to all reset once you're done.
Yeah, so like the final example I have in this section is, say you want to overload fractional part to work on interval for some reason. You don't want that to be a global change, but I need to do some specific operation where I need it not to return unevaluated. I can say, fractional parts, I'm making this modification to handle on interval. It only happens inside of this block.
But you don't want to free the other usages of fractional part is the point, or
Yeah.
clear. Yeah.
This is used all over the place internally.
So it's a block that is that does not
it's a
clear
block
the
that
thing.
doesn't clear the current values, right? Normally block clears the current definitions, but sometimes you just want to locally append to those
Right,
definitions.
and then revert the stack of definitions back to where it was at the beginning of the block.
Exactly.
Correct.
I see. This is a useful thing. I mean, I don't know whether people, it's a non-clearing block. But I don't know what the right name for it is. What is the right name? I mean, so we have this functionality is what you're saying internally.
Yeah, internally.
So if we had a name, we would be golden.
Correct.
And an inherited block just doesn't seem like it's the right name.
Right. I mean, appending block, block append.
Block append is no, because that's just something different.
Yeah.
I just don't think appending is it's like building on top of, building up.
Block with definitions, but that's too cumbersome.
I don't know what that means. I mean, it block.
Right. It's block keep definitions if we wanted to be very verbose about it.
It's weird because block, the English definition is both like barrier and section. And
I know.
use both
And
of
I
those.
originally had in mind section when we named it.
Right, which this is still a section, but it's no longer a barrier.
Well, in a way it is. It has both meanings.
But
You're
it's
blocking definitions.
but the door is wide open. The door end is open. It's not a barrier.
But you're not blocking the definitions. That's the whole point of inheritance.
Right. You're blocking
Oh,
the
wait,
new
I'm
ones.
sorry,
so
for inherited.
The out
Right,
the
right,
outdoor
right,
is
right.
closed, but the indoor is open.
Got it, yeah.
So, yeah, maybe local. I mean, in some sense, this could be localized, right?
Yes,
Or locally, locally something.
Something that doesn't have the word block in the name might be preferred, yes.
Well, what about localize? So localize, unfortunately, does suggest that it keeps X fully local, like a module.
Yeah, that's sort of the sort of
Hmm.
hesitation.
Extended.
Or extending.
Well, there's always extending block.
Maybe if you're building out.
Whoops, we can't hear you properly.
Makes me think of Jenga.
What's that?
Extending block. Something for Jenga, the game, with the tower and the wood blocks.
Yeah. Is it actually a thing for that, or does it just remind you of that?
It just reminds me, yeah. But I think it's fine now.
Although it's more extending into the past than to the future, which is kind of
Well, but it's
confusing.
extending. You are extending the definitions as opposed to.
Oh, I thought it was the block that was extending, if you know what I mean.
No, I was thinking of it was a.
Right. You're
Yeah, I
extending.
see what you mean now.
It's-
You explained it, but
Yeah, it's a module of function extensions.
Is
Or
a block that allows you to extend existing definitions or something. Well, this seems like a function that's worth having. I mean, are there any semantic issues with it, or is it fairly clean?
As far as I know, it's clean. I think that the name is the issue. You're retaining values is what you're doing, I think.
Dan, our live stream is suggesting inherit scope. But inherit, I mean, we've
It's more
obviously
inherent values, right?
Yeah.
I mean, yes, it is a scoping construct, but how badly do we want to emphasize that?
What about inheriting block?
Is this related to a notion of checkpointing, like focusing on the fact that we will remember this thing we are about to change?
Sorry, what did you say, Jose?
I was thinking about something related to checkpointing. Rather than focusing on the fact that we are going to block something, focusing on the fact that we will remember the definitions for this object you are about to change.
It is correct that we are doing that, but I think that that's going to just, that kind of naming will confuse people.
I personally, inheriting block doesn't seem absolutely terrible to me. It's a block that inherits things because, inherited means you're getting it from outside. I think inherited block is just completely wrong because it's not what it's doing. But inheriting block seems like it is what it's doing. It's a block that is inheriting.
I agree with that, that's definitely an improvement.
I also agree with that. I won't say I really am delighted by the name, but it's definitely an improvement.
Let's try putting it in. Let's put it into, the prototype build and so on as inheriting block and see if we can write documentation that makes sense. All right, since we're on a roll, just 2 more minutes and then we should probably wrap up. He says, what's this one? That it cannot be simple.
It's not simple, no.
Then let's not look at that one. That one there I sort of thought was interesting as a as we build out syntax, I mean, I'm not sure maybe this is too late. But the idea is that just like, we started to use associations as just another different form of inert syntax, in addition to lists and rules and so on. The question is, would it make sense to have another inert wrapper?
For representing what?
Whatever you feel like.
Well, but like lists let you represent things with a certain structure, and same with associations.
Yes. And I mean, but rules we're using sometimes as I want a pair of things.
So what is compound used for? It's just list. You just give it compound of 1, 2, 3.
So I think it would have a different sense. I mean, it would be something like, for instance, okay, in the insanity of the Modelica naming system, okay, where you have, blah, dot, blah, dot, blah. That might be a use case. I mean, I think this is a different conversation. We shouldn't try and do this now.
I'm a little skeptical, but it also sounds a bit like we already have this with things like, I don't know, circle plus and stuff like that.
Yes, I know, which people don't use.
Even though they have nice fancy syntax, yes.
All right, that's a good point. We could just define one of those things to be this inert wrapper and start using it if anybody actually used it. This one, by the way, is a simple one, which we've never really done. To have a menu item or something that just gives you defined variables. Now, clearly, when we're doing sophisticated things, that's going to get more and more crazy. Anybody got opinions about that?
Yeah, I mean, it also kind of reminds of, there are a few use cases where, I think this is what I'm going to say is kind of a troubled concept. There are use cases where you kind of want to be able to, like, preserve the stack, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Like, say something like, get me a copy of the stack and I'm going to rehydrate it later.
Oh boy. Yeah.
This is sort of a more consumer version of that, where you just say, basically display the stack, but it doesn't have to be 100%, accurate.
Right. Or the definitions content. I should go. All right, we made some good progress here. I'm pleased that I think we've got some good ideas here about Echo, and thanks to people here and on the live stream. And I got to run off.